All right, we're going to be moving on to our next unit. We're going to be working on unit 15, which is probability. We started off with statistics a week or so ago, and we're going to kind of stop that for right now because I thought this would be better to go into. And we're going to come back with and talk about some of the areas on statistics in a little while or a little later, a few weeks from now. But we're going to go ahead and start with probability. Probability is one of those things when you're in high school or college, you're going to take an entire course just on probability and statistics. Probability is all around us. The probability of it raining, the chance that it's going to snow, the likelihood that, unfortunately, you're going to have a car wreck, you're going to get a speeding ticket, the likelihood that you're going to pass the 7th grade. So probability deals with what is called chance. Probability means the chance of something happening. Whatever that something is, it could be snow, it could be winning the lottery, it could be getting sick. I mean, the chance of anything. That is what probability is about. So, we're going to talk about the two areas we're going to start off with is what's called theoretical and experimental probability. Our central question, how do you measure the probability of an event? So if you'll copy this down, please. So our central question is, how do you measure the probability of an event? And basically, an event is whatever takes place. It could be selecting a card from a deck of cards. It could be winning the lottery, picking the correct numbers. It could be the chance of shooting a three-point shot in basketball and making it, making a hole-in-one in golf, jumping off of a building and landing on your feet correctly. That's what chance is, or that's what an event is. How do you measure the probability of an event? All right, let's skip that one. So just skip that screen. All right, we're going to start off with just a couple examples right now of what we're talking about. We have 4 flags here. It says if you choose a flag at random from this group of flags, each flag has the same chance of being selected. For instance, there's 4 different flags. So I'm going to just number these. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can all see that there are 4 different flags here. This first flag, it has a 1 out of 4 chance of being selected. The second flag, it has a 1 out of 4 chance of being selected. The third flag, 1 out of 4 chances. And this last one, 1 out of 4. So the probability of us choosing a flag with stripes, in this case, this one right here, would be 1 out of 4. Because there's 1 flag with stripes, and we have 4 total. Okay? So 1 with stripes, and 4 total. So the way we're going to write probability is what we're trying to get is our top number, and the total number on the bottom. So our probability is 1/4, or 1 out of 4. Now, when we deal with probability, I'm going to move this up. We read a statement that's written in probability, such as the problem we just did. The probability of selecting a flag with stripes, this is how we're going to write it. We're going to write it with an uppercase P, which means probability. And in parentheses beside it is what we're trying to find. So this right here is read the probability of stripes, as it says right there to the left. So the probability of stripes, we have 4 flags. 1 of them has stripes, so it would be 1 out of 4. So our probability would be 1 out of 4. Now when we write probability, we're going to write it as a fraction, you're going to write it as a decimal, or we're going to write it as a percent. And you need to be prepared to write it each of those ways. So probability of a flag with stripes is 1 out of 4. So our probability is 1/4. And as a decimal, that would be 0.25 or 25 hundredths. And as a percent, that would be 25%. Now, as a 7th grader, you should know how to take this fraction and convert it to a decimal to get 0.25. And the way we do that is we take our fraction, and we all know that line means division, so we're going to divide the top number by the bottom number. So what I have to do is put a decimal with zeros, and all I'm doing is dividing this right here. So 4 can go into 10 2 times, that gives us 8. We subtract, bring the 0 down, now 4 can go into 25 times. So that's where the 0.25 comes from. And now to convert it to a percent, all we do is move that decimal 2 places to the right, which gives you 25%. So when I'm asking you to get a probability, you're going to have one of three ways. You can write it as a fraction. You can write it as a decimal. You can write it as a percent. So what I need you to do is if you will copy this information here. So the probability of selecting a flag with stripes is 1/4. As a decimal is 0.25. And as a percent is 25%. And the way we get 1/4 to 0.35 or 25/100ths is we divide it and then move the decimal 2 places to the right to get the percent. And the 3 ways that we're going to do it is as a fraction, decimal, or as a percent. Now you just need to be prepared to be able to do it each of those 3 ways. All right? Some terms I need you to understand. I need you to understand what the word unlikely means. If I tell you it is unlikely to snow tonight, most of you are going to think there's a good chance that it's not going to. So normally unlikely means it's not going to happen. So I'm going to put here probably not going to happen. All right? When we say unlikely, that means usually less than 50% chance. Next word, likely. If it's likely to rain tonight, that means it's probably going to rain. So we're going to say here, probably going to happen. And I'm going to put here the percent is more than 50%. Okay? So, definition for unlikely is probably not going to happen, and usually it's less than 50%. Likely means it's probably going to happen, and there's more than a 50% chance that it's going to take place. Certain. If it is certain to rain, that means it's going to happen. So if something's going to happen, that means that we're going to have a 100% chance. And then the next one, it's not a word, it's more of a phrase, is likely as not. What that means is something happening that is referred to as likely as not means there's an equal chance of it happening as it's not going to happen. So I'm going to put here, equal chance of happening and not happening. So as a percent, what would be an equal percentage to represent something that's going to happen as well as something that's not going to happen? What would be that percent? And obviously, hopefully you would understand that would mean 50%. It means there's an equal chance of it happening and an equal chance of it not happening. So if you'll make sure that you get these 4 phrases, terms, and their definitions. All right, before we get into the real part of the problems with statistics, let's kind of go back to a flag example here. Suppose you choose one flag at random. Use the probability in the table to classify choosing each design as impossible, unlikely, as likely as not, likely, or certain. Now, I used these phrases right here, unlikely, likely as not, on the previous screen. So if we look at this previous screen here, I used unlikely, I used likely, certain, and as likely as not. The one word I did not put down, impossible, and I'm going to actually go ahead and put it. I wasn't going to, but I'll go ahead and put it just so that you have it here. So what do you think the word impossible means? Impossible means not going to happen. So if something has a chance or something is said to be impossible, it's not going to happen, what would be our percentage? That percentage would be 0. Okay? So before we get to this flag example, I want to talk real quick about one more thing that I wasn't going to, but I am. When we're dealing with probability, probability is classified between the number 0 and the number 1. 0 means not going to happen. 1 means it is going to happen. So if something is definitely going to happen, what would be the percent? That would be 100%. And something that's not going to happen would be 0%. So probability is always measured between 0 and 1. 0 meaning it's not going to happen. 0 can also represent 0%. 1 means it's going to happen. It means 100%. So I think it's important that you get this as well. So that if I say something has a 0 chance of happening, that means it won't happen. If something has a chance of 1, that means it's going to. Or if I say 100% or 0%. All right, let's now get back to this problem right here. So we have this example with the flags. We're going to use these phrases up here. Impossible, unlikely, likely is not, likely or certain. And you don't have to copy this down, okay? Look at these flags here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 different flags. All right? A flag with a stripe. What's the probability of selecting a flag with a stripe? We see here our probability is 0.65, okay? So, 0.65. Let's first of all think about the probability. Probability is a percent, goes from 0 to 100%. If it's 50%, that means it's likely or is not. So if it's more than 50%, that means it has a better chance. So we know with this first one, we know it's not impossible. We know it's as likely as not. We know that's not going to be an example. So that leaves unlikely, likely, or certain. If it's more than 50%, it's not going to be unlikely. So is it likely to happen or is it certain to happen? Remember, certain means 100%. So we would say for this one, it is likely. All right, so I'm going to erase this so we can use it for the next ones. All right, but let's go to the next one, triangle. Then we'll worry about the probability part. A triangle. All right, a flag that has a triangle. If we look over here on the right side, it has a 50% probability. So which one is 50%? We know it's not certain. We know it possibly could be likely. We know it's not impossible. Could be possibly unlikely. Could be possibly likely. But what makes the most sense? As likely as not. So this would be as likely as not. All right, the last one. The probability of selecting a flag that has a circle in it. We look down here, we see the probability is 1/5. 1/5 is 1 out of 5. So you have 5 things and you want to figure out the chance of selecting a certain one and there's only 1 out of 5 chance. We definitely know that's not certain. We know it's not half of it, so it's not as likely as not. It's not likely because it's not more than 50%. That leaves impossible and unlikely. And we know impossible means it will not happen. There's 0%. So that leaves the phrase unlikely. All right, now what I want to do. This next part is what I do want you to copy down. Okay, so if we have the probability of something taking place, the probability of selecting something with a stripe, and I want you to copy this part. I'm not worried about the flags, I'm worried about can you do the other parts of it. So we have the way we can write it. We can write it as a fraction, we can write it as a decimal, we can write it as a percent. So the first thing we're going to do is we have it as a decimal here, so I'm going to just move that decimal 2 places, and I'm going to write it as 65%. So I have my decimal. The other way of writing it is a fraction. And the way we can take a decimal or percent is it's easier to look at the decimal and say this the correct way. If we look at that, that's 0.65, but that's not how you truly say it. You say 65 hundredths. And you just write it the way it sounds, 65 hundredths. And then we just simplify it. What number can divide into 65 and 100? It's obvious, it's 5. So 5 can go into 65 13 times. 5 can go into 100 20 times, so it's 13 20ths. So for this one,